3.2. 3.2. But just before we dig into 3.2, I want to clarify something that I did in 3.1. I ended off saying that you should use dot equals instead of equals equals as far as objects are concerned, for example, strings. And I'm going to say, for example, strings because that's most likely what we'll be using it for. I did this solution 7 and I got an equal giving me the same answer. And I did say there are two reasons why. And I mentioned the first one by saying 1, but never really said what the second one was by saying 2. I said it, but I didn't say what it was. So the first reason not to use it is because equal is not reliable for objects and a comparison. And the second reason is the equals method that's created is specific to the object in terms of why it's equal. So this is way more powerful. And because it's a method, we can design the equals method to fit our criteria. So in the case of a string, the equals method is saying, do these two strings have the same characters in the same order? Uppercase, lowercase, everything. Same characters in the same order. And that is the equal definition for the string. So it's a lot more useful than equal. Okay. So we're going to dig into 3.2. And this is where we start to talk about control structures. There are 7 types. The first one is sequential. The 3 main types. There are 7 types in all, but there are 3 main types. The first one is sequential, then we have selection, we have repetition. Within a selection and repetition, there are 3. That's why we got 7. So it's sequential. When we get to selection, we have the if else, and the switch. And then when we get to repetition, we have the while, do while, and the for statement. Now, we're not doing these in this section here. I'm just mentioning all of them because in the upcoming units, that's what we're going to be digging into. So selections, we're going to be looking at the if and the if else, not so much the switch right now. We'll just be looking at the if to begin. Okay. So the if statement starting off is very simple. It's a single selection. It says if the condition, the Boolean expression, is true, run this code inside the if block. Otherwise, don't do it. So we have this kind of control over our code by saying we need to run this code only if a particular situation is true. So what we have there then is we have the ability to look at the expression, evaluate it, get a true or false, and if it's true, we do the code inside. If it's not true, we skip this block. So here's what we have down here, a few examples. Before we jump into the examples, though, I have this concept of the curly braces being omitted. Okay, and if you have an if statement with one line of code inside the if, so if it were like that and there's only one line of code, we don't need the curly braces for one line of code. That could get a little bit confusing. So what we would do is if we exclude that curly brace around the one line of code, we would indent. And the indentation is suggesting that this line of code is actually inside this if statement. So that's why these are looking like this, and that's why I have on the right saying we don't need the curly brace because we have one line of code. It's a simple print. So here we go. If x is less than y, print x is less than y. And if you're wondering where am I getting this from the earlier unit. X is 5 and y is 20. So this, if x is less than y, print this out, should print. Because if you remember, x less than y gave us true. So that should print. Is x greater than y, print x greater than y. This will not print, right? Because if you remember, this one was false. X equal to y, that will not print because that was false. X is not equal to y. This was true, so this would print. This one was also true, and this one was false. Okay. So at the bottom, we have an if statement. But this time, the if statement has more than one lines of code inside. So we cannot get rid of these. Okay, we don't want to get rid of those, because if we do that, then only this statement is inside the if. It's not going to throw an error. It's going to be perfectly fine. Just that these 3 lines of code are no longer in the if. Only the first one. The other 2 are actually outside. So we want to be very clear when we're writing our if statement to make sure we want things in. We put the curly brace if there's more than one. And if we're not using the curly brace because we have one, let's indent nicely and write it carefully and properly so it's quite obvious to see. So here we have, if it's true that x is less than y, and it is, we're about to change x. We're about to say x plus equal y. Compound statement, take what x is added on to y, store it back as x. So we should know now that x will be 25. Then we have y minus equal x plus y. Well, x is now 25, y is 20. We got to add those up and then take the value of y, which is 20, and subtract that. So let's run this, see what we got. All right, so these are the things that we print from earlier on, which we've seen. So we just want to focus on this little thing here. X is less than y, that's true. It's 5 and 20 at this point in time. X is not equal to y, that's true. X is less than or equal to y, that's true. So now we are printing 25 and negative 25. But we saw that 25 that printed there. So let's figure out the negative 25, okay? So the 25 that x is, because memory is destructive, gets added on to 20, right? Because the y was 20 before. And that becomes 45. But then we take that 45 from 20. So we got negative 25, okay? So if statements have a condition, it's a Boolean, needs to be evaluated. It's a comparison of like types. It's either true or false, and if it's true, we run the code inside. So right now, x and y have changed. That brings us to the end of section 3.2.